Gaza, which was one of the most densely populated cities, turned into deserted land during the continuing Israel-Hamas war. By January 2024, around 80% of the city's buildings had been destroyed. There are roughly 300,000 people living in the city among 2.2 million. Others were cornered in few square kilometers area. More than 40,000 people had perished and around 93,000 were injured. Airstrikes had destroyed 70% of Gaza City, leaving behind a barren landscape of wreckage. Nearly 11 months has passed since this violent escalation occurred on October 7, 2023, and by every passing day war is becoming increasingly deadly. There appears to be little hope of ending it. Let us try to grasp this conflict and how it has uprooted millions of people from their homes in Gaza. Before moving forward, it is paramount to understand geography of Gaza. It is a small coastal enclave with 41 kilometers long, from 6 to 12 kilometers wide, and has a total area of 365 square kilometers. It is bounded by the Mediterranean Sea to the west, Egypt to the south, and Israel to the north and east, but it lacks legally recognized borders. It is part of the occupied Palestinian territory, along with the West Bank and East Jerusalem, but it is not geographically connected. The Gaza Strip, which was home to around 2.2 million people in 2022, is often regarded as one of the world's most densely inhabited areas, nearly 15,000 people per square mile. Prior to October 7th, last year 2023 was one of the most violent years in Palestine in almost a decade. Israeli soldiers had killed at least 247 Palestinians, including 47 children, before the end of September. During the same period, Israeli forces perpetrated over 800 attacks on Palestinians and Palestinian-owned property. Furthermore, nearly 1,100 Palestinians had been forcibly removed from their houses. The continuous attack from Israel on Gaza triggered Hamas, a political organization with a militant wing. On October 7th at 6:30 a.m., Hamas launches surprise operation namely Al-Aqsa Flood, firing approximately 5,000 missiles into Israel from the Gaza Strip. Simultaneously, Hamas militants infiltrated Israel. Images and videos appeared to show militants opening fire in Sderot, killing many Israeli residents and soldiers. Infiltrators were also seen in Be'eri and Netiv Hasara, where they abducted at least dozens of hostages. In response, the Israeli army proclaimed a state of readiness for war and claimed to have struck targets in Gaza as part of Operation namely Swords of Iron. Since then, the situation in Gaza turned from bad to worse. On October 12, 2023, 1.1 million Palestinians were ordered to evacuate from north to south of Wadiya Gaza to avoid bombardment and Israeli military activities. Despite promises of protection in the southern parts, bombing persisted across Gaza. Some populations in northern Gaza chose not to evacuate, citing physical limits or fear of permanent displacement, echoing Palestinians' collective trauma from years of forced relocation onto decreasing territory. As November proceeded, the situation in Gaza deteriorated, with severe food and water shortages, exacerbated by increasing civilian casualties from Israeli attacks. A study conducted by Harvard's FXB Center in November 2023 revealed extensive damage to critical infrastructure across the Gaza Strip's 5 governorates, with more than half of healthcare, education, and water facilities affected by Israeli attacks between October 7th and November 22nd. On December 1st, the situation in Gaza has deteriorated further. With additional evacuation orders in effect, around 2 million citizens are now crowded into Rafah, the smallest of the governorates. The acute overcrowding has heightened the competition for resources, forcing many to take drastic methods to live. Compounding an already dire situation, the Israeli force imposed travel restrictions between Gaza's governorates on December 3rd, preventing the delivery of important humanitarian goods. By ordering Gaza's 2 million Palestinians to evacuate to a humanitarian zone smaller than the Las Vegas Strip and less than half the size of John F. Kennedy International Airport, the Israeli military exacerbates the population's misery. With almost 85% of Gaza's residents, or over 1.8 million people, now fled, the humanitarian crisis remains dire and shows no indications of easing. On January 1, 2024, the Israeli military ordered a large-scale evacuation to Rafah amid severe combat in Khan Yunis and Deir al-Balah, signaling a melancholy start to the new year and aggravating Gaza's already terrible position. By January 9th, the Famine Review Committee's assessment stated that Gaza had progressed beyond Phase 5, which indicates catastrophic acute food insecurity. The issue worsened on January 12th when a lengthy telecommunications blackout interrupted cell coverage throughout Gaza for about a week, cutting off critical communication ties for inhabitants. On February 14th, the Israeli military begins a 2-week period without allowing any trucks into Gaza, exacerbating starvation and need. Later that month, on February 28th, the Gaza Health Ministry said that 6 children had died from malnutrition. The next day, Israeli troops opened fire on Gaza's awaiting food aid, killing over 100 Palestinians and wounding over 700. On March 18th, the Israeli military launched a 2-week offensive against Gaza's largest medical facility, Al-Shifa Hospital. On March 25th, the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution asking for an immediate ceasefire. Israeli forces invade Rafah on May 6th. The hardship in Gaza worsens as hundreds of thousands of people flee to locations that may provide some level of safety. On June 1st, the United States worked to advance a ceasefire proposal. However, the proposal did not result in a suspension of hostilities. Instead, the war continues. Pertinently, since 2007, Gaza's food supply has been severely limited, with more than half of the population categorized as impoverished and relying on humanitarian aid to survive. Gaza imports 63% of its commodities from Israel, with 22% being food items, and the remaining 37% coming from Egypt, with 42% being food. Furthermore, 87% of the food entering Gaza goes through the Kerem Shalom Gate, whilst visitors between Egypt and Gaza use the Rafah crossing. Since the outset of the 2023 military campaign, the widespread damage and destruction of infrastructure throughout the Gaza Strip was relentless. The complete siege of food, fuel, water, and medicine makes situation in this densely populated land dire. The UN estimates that 1.7 million people, or more than 80% of Gaza's population, are internally displaced, with almost half of them residing in the area's farthest southernmost point. The BBC's study of satellite data reveals between 144,000 and 175,000 buildings have either been damaged or completely destroyed throughout the Gaza Strip. That makes up 51 to 61% of Gaza's total building area. Large farmlands of Gaza have also been destroyed. In Gaza, at least 370,000 housing units have been damaged, including 79,000 destroyed completely, according to the report by the UN Development Program. Rebuilding Gaza's shattered homes will take at least until 2040 if construction happens at extensive pace. Keep watching our YouTube channel and do subscribe it.